Property Legislative Committee meeting to order on Wednesday, February 26th at 6 p.m. Roll call. We have everyone here. We have a quorum. I'd like to take a motion to approve the agenda and the minutes from the January 22nd, 2025 meeting.
So moved.
And can I second it?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'll second it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
You hear us, Eric? I think your sound's off. I think your sound's on mute.
You're muted.
Yep, you're muted, Eric. You unmute him from our side? Sorry, I just know I
Is
could
he?
do that for Zoom, so.
Can you hear us? Yep. Okay, are you in favor? Okay, so carried. Nobody else is online, so no public comments. I do not have any chairperson comments. So
Yeah.
moving on to agenda item number 7, update on DMI.
Sorry, we're trying to figure out how to
Yeah.
unmute. You don't have to. You don't. Eric, can you unmute from your end? You're trying. We saw you though.
Up top. There's. No heat for him,
Oh, for him. I was like, what?
yeah.
Yeah, you can see the little bars right here.
Okay, you can hear us though. Okay,
Hmm.
does he have to
Well, he
change his
just-
microphone on his
We
end?
just talked, so I don't know.
So DMI, included in your packet, I included some information, just over the last, couple meetings, question that's been answered. I'm not gonna put a lot of time and detail into this. I gave you guys the original DMI, permits. I gave you the checklist of what was included on it. We keep talking about this bond. I can't find it here at the village level. I did talk to Attorney Apps. He cannot find it at his office. So there is no bond that we can find, which again, that it probably wasn't having to give in the village since our name was not on the bond, is kind of where Nick is at and everything. So there is no bond that we can
From
find.
2013.
Yes. So there is no bond that we can find at these two offices. And if you look at the checklist, it's not checked, so I don't know, I guess how much further you want me to go into that, so.
Okay,
Nick definitely looked into the case when this was closed, and there was nothing that said the village of Port Edwards was awarded a bunch of money or anything, obviously.
so there was some discussion on the ad hoc committee meeting we had last night. Dana Duncan, was part of, there was some litigation going on and there was a bond between DMI and the salvage company.
Yeah, that we know of, and that was part of their settlement with their names on
Yes,
it,
he's gonna do some research on exactly where that stood and if the village was any part of it.
Yeah, and according to our lawyer Apps, we were not at anything, and the village had no,
Okay,
but that's, and then obviously I included the notice of the breach. Obviously, there's a lot of agreements, a lot of things that happened in the past. In 2018, the village board basically made a motion to have Attorney Apps send them breaching all the contracts and the demo permit, anything that was on the table at that time. That basically it's telling that's no longer in place.
anything else from DMI from your standpoint?
Do you want me to keep taking you through the packet or no?
I was gonna update DMI from the ad hoc committee meetings.
Yeah, that's fine. I
Okay.
mean, I guess it depends how far you guys wanted me to get on what's happened in the past here. You're good.
Well, the information that, you put out was reviewed at the ad hoc committee meeting also. We had a committee meeting last night, ad hoc committee meeting last night, focusing on the DMI property. The ultimate goal of that ad hoc committee is to try to get that DMI property raised in order so we can look for developers for it. So we're going to pursue, methods and recommendations of how we can get that financed, either with or without DMI. So the members, Rob Sigler, Gene Man Savage, and Dana Duncan.
Mhm.
Are on that. We've got some good thoughts. We're gonna do some investigation and try to find out if there's any avenue that we can look at for federal or state funds to try to get some monies to demo that property. So that's ongoing. So right now, I do not recommend a possible action. We'll just keep updating and bringing any findings from that ad hoc committee will come through this committee. So before it gets to the board, so I will keep people abreast of what's going on there. We do not have another meeting scheduled at this time. We're gonna get some more information. And when we have some information, we'll schedule the next meeting and I'll bring it back to you. So anything else from DMI, Ben?
No, you know, just some
Any
information.
questions or discussion? Eric?
I have a question. Can you hear me now?
Yep,
So the question is the surveying going ahead as we were told, or what's the status of the survey?
I seen a Jewel vehicle back there, right, driving around. I cannot tell you. I didn't follow him, or if he was back there for 3 hours, 4 hours, an hour. I just seen he was on site. And again, following up with the email that I talked to, one of the managers at Jewel, that they said they were gonna be back there in February, and I noticed his vehicle. What's going on? I can't get any updates through DMI, and I really don't know.
Yeah.
It's my position to call Jewel because they're not working for the village. I want to make sure that, I'm not involved in any kind of pushing of that. I seen him on site. He told me to be on site. That's all I can tell you at this point. DMI is definitely, we've tried to reach out to them via myself, and I think, President Mansell even sent an email. We send them all every week, right around, just so we have documentation that we're trying to make attempt to them. So
if you try the phone numbers, it just you keep getting nowhere.
Yeah, I hear you.
Nobody answers.
One of the previous comments is that Jewel needs to be involved with several of those items on the checklist to get the demolition permit. So it's not just the rezoning, but there's other things for permitting that they may need to be involved in. So it's uncertain what they are, specifically they're working on. Is that a correct statement?
yeah, I mean, there's all sorts. I mean, out of those 10, I mean, again, but then none of that stuff's even play anymore because that motion's thrown out. So any of the original 10 agreements, a lot of those were through an engineering company that need to be done, the DNR permitting, other permitting. So yes, there's other things that Jewel could be working on. We don't have any evidence what they're working on. Again, that's not saying if they find those 10 things again, that we would even issue them a demo permit. That would be up to the board because that motion is
No longer valid.
So I have two questions.
Yep.
One, the POD adoption comes through us,
yes,
Yes.
we have to accept that.
so right now it's an M1, right?
Correct.
Right.
So we're not doing anything. That'd be my recommendation. Cause they haven't scratched anybody's back. Number two, under the Port Edwards code enforcement, the penalty provisions on 25-04. Now, if we had a regular residence or like I know some properties in town or whatever, and you give them the first offense, second offense, this, that, and whatever. DMI's had 45 offenses. I embellish a lot, but, so on here, it does say, like, if we had, just as a question for you, Ben, if we had any other property owner in town and the offenses were fined and this, that, and whatever, the penalties were assessed. If those weren't paid or those weren't adhered to, what would happen after that?
So this is a tricky, just like we're dealing with other properties. So when this comes to a corporation or owned by more than one person, we cannot go after. If this comes individually, like if it's Ben Martinson's house and Ben Martinson gets a citation for junk in his yard, we can put it back on Ben Martinson personally and get it out of personal taxes and other things. Diane and Kim can take those to Wood County. They can go after the properties. Unfortunately, with businesses and corporations, since there's multi-names, that's how they cover themselves. And I did review this with Nick, to make sure that we couldn't, there's nobody personally we can hold. You can't put nothing against DMI because it's owned by many people, right? Unfortunately, it's a corporation. So that's the reason why writing citations, we can write the citation. That's why I did include, we did write them citations back in 2019. If you look at that, and they were dismissed. I don't know the exact reasons why, but my knowledge was that the village felt they had no case, and that's why they were dismissed. But that's the problem with corporations is it doesn't go personally against them. If they don't pay it in that year, it doesn't go on their personal taxes or their property taxes, which I wish they would, because that would be a question for Nick. We could keep hammering these tickets and then they'd have to suffer at the end. But according to Nick, there is no penalty because it's a corporation.
And we're first lien on that property, aren't we?
That is a question that I wouldn't be able to give you 100% answer for. I could,
I thought
that would be
probably about 18 when this started rumbling again or whatever. And they were talking to us. I want to say, I mean, something maybe for you to look up, as long as we're on that title as the second lien, they can't, or first lien,
Yep.
they
And
can't just sell it and bail.
Yeah.
But I know what they're gonna do, but
It's one more important while we're on. I mean, one more important piece. I mean, I did give you guys what that value is worth and what the property taxes are of the village of Port Edwards. I mean, that's as we go about this property, we have to remember that it's still, village money. I mean, we're only getting income at $7,000 a year for that property for taxes. And the value is only taxed at 878. That's the parcels that DMI owns as of now, right? That's not including obviously the county, but just so you guys are aware, I as of right now, their tax payment, I don't have that information. There's still time that they can pay them. There's a grace period before it's done after your first pay round. But just so you have that information.
Are they current on all other taxes?
Well, it's the way the system is, there's a grace period right now that we can't,
But they
that
pay-
information can't be out until there's a lien period, there's a grace period, and then Diane can release that, and then it goes into next. Because then you got to July 31st to make your next tax
Did
payment.
they pay let me rephrase it. Did they pay 2023 taxes?
I don't have the 100% answer.
Okay.
They were up to date a couple years ago, but as of now, I don't.
Okay.
Again, they played the system, they make a $1 payment and it starts over again. So I mean, you can say that they're not current, but if they make $1 payment, then it starts all over again before anything starts. As long as they make an attempt every 2 years to pay taxes, their clock starts over again from paying their property taxes.
Okay.
So
I
the
think
last
Dana
question,
explained
this is
that last
Eric. The
night.
last question I have is, would, and I'm just throwing this out there, I'm not saying gonna suggest it, but would this make an interesting media story to get out, to the public, or, would that bring any weight on the matter, do you think?
I personally, I don't know because they're not local. They're from Ohio.
And I believe if you research it, this isn't the only site they have like this.
Yeah.
They have other sites throughout the, I don't know, world that are, basically took out the steel, took out the money value and let them sit. But, I guess that would be a question. We could run it by, Attorney Apps, I guess, if that's what you're asking, Trustee Hummel.
Yeah, that would be fine, and I guess, yeah, I get the Ohio thing, but you can certainly share the story with the appropriate Ohio newspapers, the Columbus Dispatch or whatever. They love to look at stuff like this. So I'm not saying this is what we should do. I'm just trying to think of other ideas.
I know in the ad hoc committee, Jean Mantovich knows I have that on her list of things that we could potentially explore. Again, she's still gathering a lot of information too, to make it, and she has connections in the news world. So that is on the list.
That is something that was brought up in the ad hoc committee. I don't know if you caught what Betsy said.
Okay, good, thank you.
Okay, any other discussion on DMI?
I'll follow up with that lien and get that question back to you guys in email tomorrow.
Okay.
So just so you have
So
that information.
currently going forward, there's no action coming out of committee on DMI. We're going to continue to pursue trying to get that property raised, and bringing back those findings to this committee. On update and possible action on 160 Market Avenue.
So included in your packet has the current, ordinance tickets, kind of like Mr. Saylor just asked a minute ago. You know, they just keep stacking up because there's nowhere we can go after anybody personally about them for the 160 property. I did finally have contact with, basically the manager of all these other properties. He called me the other day, and, refreshed his brain, giving him the contractor's names from, that can fix the building, and, asked him twice or whatever if he could send me an updated schedule or timeframe what they're at, so I could bring to committee tonight. To try to update them. But at this point, I don't have anything, you know, we can go after these and try to put a raised order against this building. I did run it by Attorney Apps, and I definitely want to have him come next month if that's your guys' decision. A couple of the things that he did bring to my attention, obviously, we got the fee from the lawyer to put up a raise order. If with the raise order, does the village want the building back? And if they get it back, you guys we're gonna fix it? Are we gonna demo it? What are we gonna do with it?
What's the assessed value on that building?
56,000. Cause, that's what started this. We got a price on the roof was, I believe, $24,000 or whatever. I have the exact information.
That's all.
So that's why we could originally send him the certified letter to start this conversation. I guess some of my personal fear is, you know, if we decide to go after this, what's it gonna cost for lawyer fees? Once we get it back, what are we gonna do with it? I mean, are we gonna, you know, stick a bunch of money into it? What are we gonna do? I mean, there's a lot of unknowns. But if that's the thought you guys would like to go, I'd like to next month have it on there and have Attorney Apps here, so he can clarify any questions, so there's no hidden costs. Everybody's up front before we decide to go into that process.
I think we need to get a little bit more aggressive because that's sitting vacant. Do you think we could get $56,000 for, if that was fixed to sell that property?
I mean, the roof itself is a $24,000, and I got a quote for it. The bathroom has some mold. I got a rough estimate of $10,000 for the bathroom. And the back wall is anywhere, because the brick is falling apart, is anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000 depending.
So
When they
you're-
get in there,
you're
so-
upwards of $50,000 to stick into it, to sell it for 50,000.
Well, I can't, I mean, I can't guarantee. I mean, we sold the building and we put a lot more money into it for 60,000. I mean, it'd be that, and that's where I guess it's a gamble, and I don't, that's why I just wanna make, and plus we got the attorney fees to do
I
that.
understand, but if it sits, I guess where I'm coming from, if it sits, it's not occupied and it's just deteriorating. If we do get it fixed, either through them or outside of them, we have the opportunity to get another business in here to bring business back into the village.
Yeah, you know, we'd have to take it to FHR to see if they're gonna take a loan or where the money's gonna come to, where the money's gonna come to fix it.
From this committee, we just need to take a path or pick a path of, we're just gonna let it sit, or we're gonna try to get them to fix it. We can escalate the ordinances and try to get them to do it, which is, I think, the right path. But if they don't, and then we end up with a vacant building, then what do we do?
I'd recommend, if we wanna do that, we'd recommend that we would bring Nick in next month and have him go through all the options and to put a raised order against this building, if that's what the direction you guys, we wanna go after him, that would be the next breath. Let's go to closed meeting with, Nick to make sure we have everything covered, what we're gonna do and what the process is gonna
The
be.
raise order would go to the owners of the building. current
Yep,
owners.
and then after that's done, you'd make the motion, send it to FHR for finances.
Discussion, I'm interested to hear what other trustees' thoughts process are.
I don't know. I mean, a lot of money I think as a village, we lose money on that. Doesn't matter if we put somebody in there, because you're not gonna be able to market it very high. There's not a great answer. I don't know.
We will be the closer. I mean, we put some, I mean, I think by the time the lawyers and things, you're gonna be looking $80,000 by the time we end up chasing everything down to get the building, we make the repairs, and that's
But
the gamble.
we could at least get an accurate cost of that and make an educated decision we'd be underwater if we sold it, but then the only benefit would be somebody getting in there and having revenue for the village.
Oh,
As a
correct. I mean, I think
business.
great idea. It's just, even the lawyer fees, I'll be honest with you, our lawyer line, I mean, yeah, we gotta bring, it's gotta go to FHR because they'd have to make the decision where the
Understand.
fees are gonna come from.
We either, yeah, I would much rather have them fix it and then get it occupied, but then we have to pursue all options.
Well, I think what you could do is if, the raise order went to them, and they decide, you know what, it's not worth it, and they just walk away from it, then we just market it as is.
And see if somebody wants
See
to
if
get,
somebody wants it, then they can.
Yep.
Build it
Understood.
out however they wanna build.
agreed.
We don't have to be the construction company and
Correct.
do all that,
Correct.
so. I guess first line of action would be to see if anybody would want it
Correct.
and market it that way.
Yes.
The other question I had though is you had to refresh their memory, but they did make $124 payment at one point back in June.
Correct. They sent me a letter.
They knew exactly what was going on.
Yeah, and they know it's, I mean, they sent an email that said, we're working on it back in June. We're trying to get a contractor and, the other day when I talked to him, sent the letter, I mean,
It's almost a year.
yeah,
I think personally, I think we need to escalate it to the next level to try to get some action. And then from there, we can then determine the path forward. Is
Yeah.
Eric?
Yeah, I'm good with that, with the plan. I think one of the things we definitely want to avoid is investing money in the process and ending up, it being, costly to us to make it happen. And I'd like to get some more information, about, what it would look like if we sold it as is.
That would be the next step, and we'd have to have an understanding of what it would take to make it whole too, that total cost. To
Yeah.
make that informed decision.
So I'm in on what you guys are talking about.
Okay. So, what I'm hearing is there's no action to come out of committee other than, for the next agenda item, we'll bring, Nick in to look at a raise order. Is that what I'm hearing?
Sure.
Yeah. And we've documented that in a minute. Thank you. Okay, update on possible action on CyberOne tip loan.
so in your packet, I've included the emails, and basically the commitment that, Jamie and also Earl Richards have made. I've contacted both of them. Basically, they're willing to give us a $10,000 payment right now. They did drop off, yesterday, the $1,550 for February's, payment. So that would get us at the 11,500. If we decide that we're okay with giving us the $10,000, if you read in his packet, basically in his email, in the 60 days, he's hoping to come up with another, catch-up payment plan or whatever to, try to move forward. I did talk to both of them, and they're working together. I don't know specifics. I believe this is, each one is putting 5 into this, payment coming from both owners. So that's where we're at. They're just waiting for me to, I said I'd run it by you guys, but they're willing to, make this $10,000 payment or whatever by the 27th, which is after this meeting.
Discussion?
So we've already given them a forbearance. I mean, I understand things are tough, this, that, and whatever. I'm more than happy to take the 11,500 from them. If that's what they want, to put it towards the whatever. We have to remember that the loan came out of the TIF. So that's not our money per se, that's tax money of everybody else's. So they're not just taking from us, they're taking from other people. Because I guess I was a little confused on how it was stated that they would need 60 days or I don't remember what it was, Is that like no payments for,
No, they'll
X amount
continue,
of-
they'll continue and that's why I verified the next one. They're gonna continue the 1,500, but 60 days come up with hopefully another lump sum,
another lump sum?
lump
Yeah,
sum. Cause
to
I,
determine a path to catch up.
If that is the path that we want or agree on, I'd like that written somewhere, not just in an email saying that this is what they're gonna do, on their, balance sheet or whatever. This is the 10 and then this is the date. We're supposed to get X amount of dollars and basically that would set us, or that would allow us not to push back as hard as long as we see good faith. I think even to go back to the DMI, we gave too much good faith and then we're in a spot. I don't want to squash these guys' dreams at all. I mean, that building would be even harder probably to market to do something. So as long as we have positive forward movement, I'm for it. But we're 3 years behind yet.
Mhm.
Did you guys ever see the books?
No, I never did. They
Rob
did, they
did?
reviewed them with Rob. My feeling is they are showing at least some good faith and some action. I think we should give them the 60 days to come up with a plan to get square. And at the end of the 60 days, if we see that they have a plan to get back to ground zero, then we can basically just keep paying the 1,550. As long as they're making monthly payments. I agree with trustee Saylor that we should have something in writing from them saying, yes, we're gonna make monthly payments of 1,550. We'll give you 60 days. At the end of 60 days, we want a plan of how you're gonna get back to ground zero, basically.
what do we wanna write for me? A day 60, what do you want me?
I wanna see-
Penalty, or what do you wanna put in there?
No,
right?
I wanna see how much they're gonna pay each month for the next year. And then we hold them on that.
Okay.
But that's not just making your monthly payments every month. Because
It's your monthly
They're
thing
that's your monthly payment. You gotta have
with.
an additional whatever to try to nibble at that 37.2 that they're
Yeah.
in rears of.
When do we want it? I mean, I think, again, I've been blunt, we've had great, when do we want, I mean, when do we want that 32, I mean, when do we want the rest of that back to zero? I mean, do we wanna say that you, being June 1st, that you have to get us paid back completely? Or do you wanna see I mean, we've seen their plans, right? And they keep giving us plans, but I think we gotta put a firm date. I mean, if we want them back to zero, right?
I would say, my opinion, my personal feeling is maybe give them 6 months, as long as they're making monthly payments, give them 6 months to get back to solid zero. To catch up on the 37.2 minus the 10. If that's what that number works out to.
Yeah, I mean,
That's what a feeling. Just throw a date out there.
I just wanna be able to give, I mean, again,
Maybe it's 3 months, maybe it's.
a hard date, and at this point, you need to be back to, so you're just giving us $1,500. I mean, right, and Eric is right, this can drag out forever. I mean, I don't know. I mean,
I'm curious to see what Rob saw. Do they got
well, Rob, I guess you weren't at the last meeting. So-
15,000?
But Rob's,
a
it's a
month
balance.
coming in?
When Rob's seen it, basically, they're not losing, they're not making. It's a balance from the books. And those are books.
Okay.
So,
They can make them.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
I'm okay, as you all are, with the 60 days. However, I do believe two things ought to happen in that time. One is we need a clear plan of, so what after 60 days, it doesn't happen. I'm less than encouraged by the wording, which is we hope to be able to. I'm not interested in hope. As people have said, hope is not a strategy. I want to know what you're willing to do. And I then think we could maybe talk to somebody in the bank industry, maybe Rob Ziegler, and say, Rob, would somebody give them a loan to catch up with the village, with the TIF kind of thing? And if so, after 60 days or whatever number of months we want to give them, if they haven't, we could either ask them to go get a loan, if that's a realistic option, or then we've got to decide if they say, no, we're not going to do that, then what are we going to do? But I clearly think we need an option of what happens if in 60 days they don't, or what happens if we get more of yeah, we'll try really hard to do that in 6 months. I'm not interested in trying hard or hope. I'm interested in tell me what you're going to do. And let's live with it, be firm about what it is what you're going to do and find a way to do it. I mean, otherwise we're gonna, my belief is in 60 days, they're gonna pay for part of it and then ask for more time. And I think you gotta call it at some point, and we're getting really close to that.
I mean,
So-
definitely, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I mean, I agree the 60 days, and after 60 days, we'd have to have Nick draft up something that'd be official. You know, I mean, me sending a letter, me signing them is only our I mean, a lawyer signing it and document in both ways is something we can hold against them, right? And that's where we have to decide. I mean, you know, I can draft up something that says in 60 days, this, and that, but is it gonna hold up in a court compared to when a lawyer drafts it up and sends in 60 days? The village is going to put, you know, legal actions against them. I mean, that's when it gets serious, right? I mean, when a lawyer sends you a letter and says they're gonna take legal actions, that's when heads are gonna probably turn, and at that point, we can write down, these are the options. At that point, we start the raise order, if that's the option we wanna go.
I know at that amount in arrears, if that was my mortgage, I wouldn't be living in my house right now.
Correct. And that was, I mean, Rob said this, I mean, the bank would not allow this to go.
If it was 5 or maybe even 10,000, yes, we can work together and figure something out. But for 4 years, they didn't say nothing until we brought it up.
And
Agreed. What I'm hearing, if I can kind of summarize, is that we're okay with the 60 days, but at the end of 60 days, we need something concrete from them on how they're gonna get back whole. Otherwise, we're gonna continue to pursue legal recourse.
And I think
Yes, and I think that ought to be, that legal document ought to be ready to go on day 61.
that's what I was gonna say is communicate that to them, like, look, we're serious, because on day 61, there will be a letter from our lawyer coming.
we can attach, when Nick comes next month to talk about, 160, we can fill Nick in what we want that letter to look like so that he can start working on that if we don't see anything.
Okay, I think we're all in agreement. We don't need a motion because it's gonna stay in committee. Do I understand that correctly?
Mhm.
Okay. So we can just move on that action. Okay, any other discussions on Cyber One? Hearing nothing. Discussion on creating a quiet zone ordinance regarding train horns in the village.
Do you want me to?
Go ahead.
So with door knocking and talking to a lot of people in the last couple of weeks, 2 different people asked about if the village could be a essentially train horn free zone. I understand that there's a lot of people that live pretty close to the trains, here. So that's why I brought it to committee, and we've done some research. So that's how this got here, is 2 different people asked like what the odds are, for that. So Ben, do you wanna, or back to whoever?
So, after this got brought up, did some research. First of all, basically got the Federal Rail Administration, locomotive horn sounding, quiet zone establishment fact sheet. Obviously, the number one thing that needs to be discussed on this is, to have a legal quiet zone, you need to basically have flashing lights and gates, right? Establish a quiet zone. If you look down to it, not go the whole thing, I mean, warning devices, flashing lights and gates, right? We have crossing at Seneca Road that we own 1 lane of. We have a crossing at Bruner Avenue. We have a crossing at Brabunker Avenue. We have one at Levine and one at Latender. Latender Avenue is the only one that has arms and a divided median, which is all part of the regulations to even apply for these quiet zones. So unfortunately, to take the other 3 intersections plus Seneca Road, we're looking at 500 to 600,000, even more, to get those crossings, to have the arms, to have division in the road. Did some research with Wisconsin Rapids. They dealt with this a couple years ago. Looked at all their intersections. I mean, unfortunately, it's not guaranteed that you're going to get them, and it's financially, we don't have the funding. And I looked at some grants. I didn't see any grants out there that were 100%. You know, it's something we can keep on the radar. I can keep looking into, but I mean, unfortunately, to go to a quiet zone, for one, it's not guaranteed, and 2, we don't have the funding right now to pursue this. event unless, I guess the board's looking at, borrowing or doing something creative to move forward with this, so.
I'll just piggyback on what Ben was saying. In the Rapids report, they did a study. We would need to do a study through probably the same organization, and they're anywhere from 2.9 to $5 million per crossing. Just to make them, and then you can apply for that quiet zone, and it's renewed every 3 to 5 years. So, it's an enormous expense. So the initial outlay would be having to do a study to find out what the cost would be to make all of these crossings compliant, and then you can apply, then do it and then apply. So it's an enormous expense in the probably 10 to $12 million range. It looking based on 22 data from
And
Red.
then the last sentence says additionally, the locomotive operator can still blow the horn.
Correct.
If it's-
No guaranteed.
So it's an enormous expense. Right now, I don't see any potential of moving it forward. What we should do though is share that information, the cost, so to the residents who are asking about it, so we are taking it seriously.
Yep.
So if we can do that, I would appreciate it. Any other discussion?
Nope.
Number 11, discuss the possible motion to pass a facility use agreement. So we have the facility use agreement in the packet, and the correction of spelling correction has been made. And we did add, we changed it from it to any in the second line of the second paragraph. And we added the last sentence. This agreement is subject to approval by the village administrator for the use of all village-owned buildings. So to bring up the discussion point of other organizations trying to use like the village garage and or the fire hall, it's up to the discretion of the village administrator to say yes or no.
Do we need to change that to technically village coordinator?
Yes, and I agree with that, and what would happen if we don't ever have that chair filled? Then it would be village
Back to the,
coordinator or board.
yeah. Think so.
I'm not saying Ben's going anywhere. And then we've got all the legal fees in here. I know it gets it kind of wordy, but, according to our village attorney, this is protecting the village, so. Discussion.
So. I have a question. Is Alexander Park included in this?
Village facilities, correct.
So,
Yes, the answer is yes.
so my only concern is, if I wanted to do a graduation party down at Alexander Park, I have to,
There's not this one.
it's not this one?
No, it's an auto park registration.
Okay.
Sorry.
So what's the difference?
This is drafted for organizations that are gonna be using the property to run a community event where you're gonna sell things, this isn't a private owned deal. Right now, when you go to the parks to get for a graduation, it's a private party that you're renting the shelter for. It's been in place forever. I mean, this is for if you're having a community event. The Lions Club, the Port Edwards Baseball Association, the Firemen's, anybody that's using the park to run a full-fledged event.
Okay, is that understood just generically?
So my concern is, there's a lot of prohibited language here. And we don't know what is gonna happen at those functions. I mean, I do see unless pre-approved, unless pre-approved, unless pre-approved. I think, I mean, I know there was work in here, but my opinion is to just keep it simple. I mean, because ultimately that last statement, the agreement is subject to approval by the village administrator or Ben's position. The last thing I want is something that to go down there that we approved or somebody filled out and Ben signed it or whatever, and then somebody goes down and says, I saw gambling, well, they're playing sheep bet or something for quarters, you know, or whatever. If you don't have that in there, if you just leave it as the village administrator or your position is going to approve it, yea or nay, I think keeping it simpler more than wordy.
Are
is more
you
beneficial.
specifically talking about 1 through 7 and the conduct is strictly prohibited or the other legal, the liabilities?
I think he's looking at draft one. That was the original one we had, which is pretty simple, right? In your packet, you had draft one, which is pretty. This came from Wood County. That's where this started. We got this from board member from Wood County. This is what Wood County pretty much uses for their facilities. That's where this started from. And then obviously we sent this over for Nick for approval, and that's where we got to this. So that's why I did attach this into your packet, right? You guys have this one?
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Draft one?
this was just, this is where we started, okay? And this is where we got to. This is short and simple. This doesn't involve anything. This is just a signature from basically myself and that person. And that's,
I just don't want the village micromanaging whatever event is going on down there. And if you have somebody that attends that event or walks by that event and knows of this and says, all right, I saw somebody smoking in an undesignated smoke area or whatever, that's on here as a prohibited. I don't care what the words are in the 7, but I don't think we need to manage that. You know, we're renting a facility, you're gonna use it, that's probably gonna be part of your spiel when they come in and they sign it, hey, you're not gonna do this, don't do this, do this. This is what you can do, and then if something happens, then it happens. But limiting ourselves to these 7 things, there might be other things, or
Where did those 7 things come from, Nick?
Nick drafted this. I sent this to Nick, draft one, sent to Nick, and then Nick came back with draft
Do you know
two.
why he put those things in there?
He said to cover village and any issues, right?
I bet you there's other things that could be added, but then where does it stop?
Could how about this? If you could simplify the form, but then you can give a handout of these things or, I mean.
I mean, people,
post-mortem.
people have been using, again, we have our parks when I rented, whoever rents it, right? But I mean, the Lions have been holding, I mean, this has been going on for years, right? I mean, the Little League baseball tournament's going on, the Lions Club has picnics, the fireman has a fireman's dance. I mean, they did brat fries. I mean, this has been going on for years, and it's all been through the administrator. They come down, the representative from the organization say, hey, we're gonna have this event in this day. And it was just a handshake and everything was good, right? I mean, and unfortunately, we've gotten to this, you know, over the last couple of years and, you know, either we clean up the language a little bit so it's cut and dry. I mean, obviously, there's no right or wrong. We keep it simple, like Eric says. I sign it. I guess I take the responsibility who's ever gonna have an event, and if something goes haywire, I guess it's on me. And again, we can have a sheet that would say, you know, this criteria, and make sure you don't do this, this, and that. I mean,
I guess we need to make sure that the village is indemnified and doesn't have any liability for potential of exposure for legal recourse for being sued. So I think we need to be covered from that standpoint, the legal standpoint. And beyond that, I agree with some of the discussion here. The simpler sometimes is better, but we just gotta make sure that the village is covered from a legal standpoint, from my perspective.
well, I mean, the simple one, the facility hereby agrees to hold harmless in the village, its officers, employees, and agents from and all liability, loss, cost, and damage. I mean,
That
it's
should be changed to any.
it's telling you all liabilities, you know, at what point you wanna go.
Well, and this is what the county uses,
This is what I've gotten from a county representative.
so
I'm okay either way. I do wanna if our lawyer put this in, it would be nice to understand why he thought it was necessary, unless it's just being a lawyer, being a lawyer.
Last month I had that email, I had his email included in your packet.
I mean, he's got the same exact paragraphs.
Yeah.
As part of that
But
one.
he just expounded on it considerably. And if there's,
So basically, I've got because of the format's hard for me to manipulate, I would suggest that it be 2 pages and have the following changes and notes. And I have the email from Nick Apps that was sent to me when he did this. I had to include last month's packet, sorry, I didn't include it in this month's, but
I remember reading it. I just remember it.
So-
Right now, we don't have anything, right?
Right now, we have an agreement that if I rented a residence do for personal events at both parks. Anybody that has a bigger event, the firemen, the Lions Club, PIBA, anybody else. Again, they come down and tell the ministry they're having an event this day and we reserve the park and they're on their own.
So this would be a change to what we currently do. This would have a form to be,
This is pretty much what it looks like.
yeah, you included this before.
Every event, every circumstance is different. I'm 100% with trustee Saylor. I mean, we can sit here for days and draft up every little thing that comes about. I mean, when I first started here, there used to be the Urkel had a Christmas party at the fire station every year. I mean, there was,
What was the reason to change this now? Because we missed, did we miss one or something?
we brought up about an event prior to this meeting that was gonna happen at the fire station or whatever. And this is kind of, we were trying to include in the agreement, so it was all cut and dry
So it's once a year
once a year,
instead of by event.
correct?
Mhm.
So is there thoughts on going to once a year? I think this would be beneficial. It would be less paperwork and headaches. It'd be a pre-approval for their activities for the year. Like the,
The easiest thing is not have anything, but I wanna make sure if Identity has an event, that nothing that we don't get an issue about if they're having popcorn or peanuts or beer or what they're doing. And that's why we're trying to go to a cut and dry thing here, so that every time the Lions or the fire department wants to have an event, that it's cut and dry. I mean, that's how we got to this point where we're at, and I don't, trying to keep it under, bringing up why we're to this point, cause I don't, we all know we got this, but we need to come up with an agreement so that people can have events at their stations or their clubs and don't have to come to the village board for approval every time they want an event.
I am fine with draft one.
okay, the athletic association holds multiple events a year at the fire station.
Potentially.
They usually a dance, and then is there another
Yeah.
one?
Well, I don't. Back, a couple years ago, we had family day picnic, we had open house.
So
we had
there
a
is
couple different.
potential for them to do
Yeah.
multiple events, and this would simplify it to do it. And would they put those,
Mhm.
all the dates on there?
The dates that they know of now, they put on there, and if one comes up, they just call me, add it, and I could bring it to the board once, and bring it to the board for review. I mean,
Okay.
that's, this is pretty much gonna be administrated through the village office, through the village office. No matter if it's administrator, if it's administrator coordinator.
I'm okay with one. With the auspice that Nick doesn't see anything that when we're leaving all this other stuff off, that's gonna leave the village in a lurch or legal liability. I don't see how it could be if Wood County's using this, but I'm not a lawyer.
That's what
So-
it boils down to for me, if the county is using that, which is a lot bigger scale than we are, I would think that their attorneys and their corporate
So
counsel.
my recommendation is that we table this. And when we have a handful for attorney apps, he's coming in here, we bring this up and bring it up at that time. That would be,
Is he gonna be here for the next?
I'm gonna schedule him to come, yes,
Okay.
try to talk about those other situations, because I can't give you that wording that Nick is mean. Obviously, I sent that to him and you guys read the email and that's what he sent
He
back
added
on,
through,
right?
but-
So,
I mean, I do like the thought of it being simpler, it's easier, less
One page.
legalese. But
from a lawyer's standpoint, they're always gonna add language, right?
you're
That's,
gonna
that's,
make sure that all liabilities are covered.
And then the alcohol permit would accompany this.
right, that's through the village clerk. You still gotta pull a permit.
Yeah,
to sell alcohol. That's a whole different, that's nothing to do with.
and then it says in here that it is a facility user responsibility to obtain any permits or license are required.
Yeah.
So, trustee Hummel, do you have any comments?
Wow. Here's what I think if we're gonna ask the attorney to come, let's give him a heads up. And my big thing was if there are some of those 7 points or all those 7 points he thinks are critical for us, is there a way to say them in less legalese and, one small paragraph as opposed to seven separate points. And see if we can meet the, easy to read and yet, fully, indemnified, going forward. So that would be my only suggestion is let's give them a heads up and find out why the seven and could we do it in simpler language and that covers all seven of those or six of them or whatever ones that are must-haves.
Okay,
Yep, and I'll have a conversation. I'm here the next day or two, so he can be heads up before he comes.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. What I'm understanding, I'm just gonna try to summarize. I think we're in favor of making a change to going to a once-a-year form.
Yes.
I think everybody agrees on that.
Yes.
I'm seeing nods. So we'll just try to clean it up and make it as appeasing to non-legal people as possible. That's a better way to say it.
Yeah, I call it easy to read.
Yep. Thank you. So we'll table that, if that's a correct terminology, President Mansell, till next meeting. And 13 and 14 will are not pertinent anymore. We need the facility use
12 and
agreement
13.
before we can do 13 and 14. The only thing I will ask about that is, once we get it finalized, the facility use agreement, do we want it in both 12? I think 12 is applicable, because that is where all of the, other forms are, correct?
Correct.
And, do we want it in 5? The fire department, because those are our only, employees that would be using it.
And I did run that by the fire chief. You guys asked last time and he was okay with it being in there. He thought it'd be cut and dry that way, so. Up to you guys.
So that's the only discussion on those 2 points. We're not gonna get a motion, but are those the 2 applicable areas so we can at least, once we get a finalized agreement, are those the 2 places we want it?
There's not a specific spot for parks in the ordinance book.
No,
Kind
unfortunately,
of is under the facilities,
Yeah.
under licenses.
it's the best spot we could find. Correct.
So are we okay with those 2 spots?
Mhm.
Okay. Trustee Hummel?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So hopefully we can, once we get the finalized facility use agreement, we can just get a motion to put it in those 2 spots and bring it to the board. Number 14, the village retirement plaque board resolution that was dated May 11th, 1988. Read, the village board at its regular board meeting on May 10th, 1988 passed the following resolution to present a plaque to any employee upon retirement who has been employed by the village for 10 or more years. We're looking at the possibility of changing that to read, modifying the resolution to read, to present a plaque or $50 gift card to any employee upon retirement who has been employed by the village for 5 or more years. If this is passed, then we would put it in the village labor policy handout. Discussion, or do we have to have a motion first?
No, we just discussed.
It can be
Okay.
discussed.
So I'll start the conversation here. Obviously, this has been in place for a lot of years, 1988, right? We've had a lot of full-time employees retire over the years. Some got plaques, some didn't. Obviously, we've had change of administration. We've had all sorts of reasons. Maybe they just said, I don't want one. And whatever, they move on, right? And they say it one day, they don't want one. Maybe the next day, a year later, they see somebody say, oh, I didn't get offered one, right? So, I'm in the spot now, right or wrong, that I want to make sure this is clarified so that when an employee leaves, that if they've been more than 10 years, I say, do you want a plaque? And if they say no, I have them sign a sheet of paper that I'll come up with that I know personally that I offered it to them so that I can't get hold accountable for not offering them to them. Most of our employees are long-time employees it's not an issue, right? We do have an employee that's coming up that only worked 5 years, right? You know, we can follow this. Somebody can direct me, Ben, you go and buy a plaque for the next retired person that there is. And I've been authorized by somebody on the board, run it through the expenses, it's done and cut and paid for, right? I mean, this doesn't need to be a big drawn out deal, and I'm sorry it has gotten to that. I just want it to be clarified. So if we follow what's in there, that as of right now, employees, unless they work 10 or more years, they get a plaque. And if they work less than that, no matter what it is, that they get what, a handshake or whatever it is, and out the door they go unless I'm directed by a board member to buy a plaque.
Okay. My thoughts are, I think it's good to recognize employees for service upon retirement. So I think that's a good thing. Do we want to modify the current resolution is the question. And I will open it for discussion.
My opinion would be to leave it at 10 and then just add the words or a $50 gift card. So when somebody comes to you and says, I don't want a plaque, then you give them the gift card and then you're good to go. But leave it at 10.
Okay,
Well, first of all, I want to apologize for adding to the overextensive conversation we had at the board meeting about this. So I'm fine with what Eric Saylor said.
so do we want a motion and what would the verbiage be for the motion? If somebody wants to make that motion?
So to deviate from this, like what Eric proposed, you would have to make a motion.
So do you want me to present? I guess we will modify. Motion will be to modify the resolution dated May 11th, 1988 to read, present a plaque or $50 gift card to any employee upon retirement who's been employed by the village for 10 or more years.
Is that a motion?
Did you make that motion?
That's what I'm, yes.
Okay.
Well,
I'm
that's
trying to
what the
write it.
motion would be.
And I'll
I guess.
second it.
Okay, I'll make that motion and seconded by trustee Hummel.
So discussion. That would be you don't need to have them sign a piece of paper saying you don't want the plaque. You get one or the other.
Correct.
And this would go. So do you have the motion written correctly?
That's what I'm trying, okay.
It's the same one that's on here.
Yeah, but
Just write it that way.
Instead of 5, it's 10.
Yes,
Okay.
correct. And it would be included in the village labor policy and also as a resolution. So they would get it when he hands out the village labor policy every year.
Essentially, I mean, I added the ordinance, I mean, we were just updating a resolution. That's why I did attach the ordinance from the league, just so that there's clarification, because I didn't know. I'm updating on a resolution what the rights and wrong were, so
Okay,
trying to get clarification.
any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of passing this motion and moving to the board, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Any old business? I don't not have any. Any new business?
Where am I?
Chicken.
Chickens. So over the years, I've had a couple people ask about chickens in the village. I know we discussed this a year or two ago in this committee. And the person who brought it up never kind of came and advocated for it, like they said they were going to. So again, I've had more questions on it, so I'm bringing up a new business if we would want to put that on the next agenda. I also have handed out, sorry, Eric, I'll have to send you this stuff, but the ordinances for Wisconsin Rapids and Grand Rapids, what they have both done in the last couple of years of allowing chickens in their municipalities. I also have a town of Grand Rapids, the chicken permit application that they do. They also have an initial fee of $35 and then an annual fee that you have to pay, kind of like a dog license type of issue. I do know that there is legislation in the state of Wisconsin that will more or less make municipalities allow chickens to a certain degree. I'm not sure where that has landed. I think this started in 2023, the initial discussions. So that might be heading our way anyway. But I think if we can get from the very little bit I have been able to find, if we can at least put our parameters in
Develop some ordinances.
correct, then it's not gonna be, it's still gonna be forced upon everybody, but if we at least start that ball rolling, it's not gonna be as,
So I guess that would be a future agenda item for.
if you guys want, just because again, it's been brought up again, to my attention. So then I just also wanted to give some information for everybody to look at
Do
what that
we
would look
want
like.
to put it on the agenda for next?
That is up to you.
Be cognizant of concerns from the village residents.
I'm gonna come after one more time, and I don't throw Nick hardcore here right now, but if we're gonna bring this up next month, and if Attorney Apps is gonna be here, this would be the time. If you're looking for clarification, anything that's written in any of those ordinances, he'd be the guy that'll be here.
My suggestion is to put it on the agenda for next, and then we can try to come up with our own version of ordinances of how we would want to do it to try to stay ahead of it.
And I'll try to find the link for where that is in the process on the state level.
Not saying we're going to pass the ordinances, but at least we can develop what we would think we would want.
Well, and we can discuss it
Yeah.
either way. Sorry.
One thing that Nick can look up prior to coming, because I know a resident of Grand Rapids that wanted chickens. And when he went to their planning council, and I didn't see it on their application, they told him that, don't quote me on what it was, but it was 3 to 5 acres to have chickens.
Correct, Grand Rapids does have regulations on the size of your lot.
Yep.
And does take a lot of people out of that in the
Right
village
here,
of pull
5
that.
acres.
Yep.
Parcels of
So-
land, at least 5 acres. of bird subject
And I think
development,
Rapids
blah,
have
blah,
got
blah, blah.
parameters as well. And then I know I helped a friend get her chickens in Grand Rapids and it had to be so far away from a neighbor. It had, you had to draw out your plot of land and map it
Other regulations right here.
and all that. So,
The one you.
Yeah.
and we can
So as long as Nick has that,
parameters,
Yeah, we can drop the ordinances however we want for the village. So I think we can at least have that discussion.
Between 5 acres takes majority of our residents. Out of that, we only have,
And that's what Grand Rapids said we can do. I mean, we can do.
you guys.
Okay, thank you. So any other new business? Any correspondence received? 12, 13, whatever it is, 17. Future agenda items, we will have DMI. Continuing of 160 Market. Any information on Cyber One? And facility use agreement. And then I think we'll, if we can pass it, we can bring the other motions of 12 and 5 ordinance, adding it to those two. Anything else for future agenda items? Trustee Hummel,
No, none here.
trustee Saylor? Okay. Next meeting date, I will propose March 19th at 4:30. March 26th would be the normal one, but that's spring break and I know Ben and trustee Saylor will be out of town. Okay. We'll leave it at that. And without further ado, if there's no objection, I will adjourn the meeting at 7:05.
Have a good night, Eric.
Thank
Good
you.
night,
Thank
Eric.
you all.
Thanks.
Enjoy vacation.